The most successful people are thinking about their purpose, their compass, the way they set their sails. The winds, the storms hit all of us, but we can choose how we want to set the sail. And that sail should be set according to that purpose that we have for our life. So working on someone else's dream is very dangerous, to find that you have only become part of somebody else's vision and that you haven't really set your own.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. I'm a summer camp director, writer, and speaker, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents over the past 3 decades. My husband, Steve, and I are raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 15 to 25. So my interest in raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults is personal as well as professional. I'm so excited for the arrival soon of my new book, Happy Campers: 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults. I was thrilled to have one of my parenting educator heroes, Michael Thompson, read an early version of my book and write an endorsement. If you don't know Michael Thompson, he is the author of 9 amazing parenting books. Many of them are about raising boys, including the bestseller Raising Cain. He also has books about summer camp, including one of my favorites, Homesick and Happy. In his blurb about Happy Campers, this is what Michael Thompson wrote. Happy Campers is a joyful and wise parenting book. Drawing on her lifetime of experience as a camper, camp counselor, and camp director, Audrey Monkey shows us what is most important in the lives of children. She then takes the next step and teaches parents how they can recreate the magic of camp in their own homes. I have never read a more optimistic and well-grounded guide to parenting. For ordering information, visit happycampersbook.com. You'll find links to different retailers who will be carrying Happy Campers, and you can pre-order your copy now. For episode 84, I had the privilege of chatting with Skip Prichard, author of the Book of Mistakes. I hope you enjoy this episode and get some encouragement and possibly pick up a copy of his book or listen to it as an audiobook. I think it would be a great read aloud as a family or an audiobook to listen to. It really provides some great encouragement as Skip tells the story of David, a guy who thought he was doing everything right, but is just unhappy with his life and where it's going. And he discovers some wise people who teach him about 9 different mistakes that you can avoid to have a successful life. I hope you find our interview as well as Skip's book as encouraging as I did. Today on the podcast, I'm thrilled to have Skip Prichard, author of the brand new book, The Book of Mistakes: 9 Secrets to Creating a Successful Future. Welcome to the podcast, Skip.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, really excited that we finally had a chance to talk. And you're very busy on your book tour right now.
Always busy doing something, and I travel around the world.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be connected with you. Why don't you start by just telling a little bit about your background and how you came to writing this book?
Well, my professional background is I'm a CEO and I've led several large global companies, but actually the way the book actually started, the thinking behind it was way back in my childhood when my parents started taking in people from all walks of life, but mostly they were people who were troubled, they were addicted, they were abused. And I became fascinated with the fact that somebody would stay with us maybe a couple years, go to school, get a job, move on, and be successful, relatively stable. And then somebody else would seemingly do the same thing and end up back on drugs, back in an abusive situation, circling back through the house, not exactly successful. And I thought, why is this? That one would succeed and one would fail or struggle a lot more. And so I began this kind of lifelong study, people and what makes them tick and how do you become successful, what success really is. And that's kind of the genesis of how it all started. I was always fascinated with people's mistakes and what their struggle was, because it's not so easy, right? So sometimes you look at somebody and you think, oh, that person's got it all together. And then you peel it back and go, well, they've gone through some tough times and somebody else is going through some tough times. And you start to understand why. And it just really is illuminating, I think, to all of us to learn those lessons from people, not just their success, but their struggle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I loved the format of your book. And before we started recording, I mentioned that I did feel a lot of similarity to like the energy bus idea, that fable. So it tells a story that's very relatable about a real person that struggles with many of the same things that many of us do. And then these lessons learned from these different kind of mentors or guides along the way. And each one teaches about one mistake that this character can learn from. So also, I wanted you just to share who you think this book is best for, because I have some ideas, but I want to hear what you think.
You know, it's been fascinating to watch the response, and I'm so pleased to see how it's resonated with people. And in fact, it's being translated into languages all over the world. I'm watching these cool covers come up in Korea and China and Ukraine and all sorts of places you would never think about as an author. But I really have been watching how it's resonating most with people in transition. And so it's not necessarily an age group. It is actually resonating with people who may be going into retirement, or they're in transition in midlife crisis mode, or they're starting a new job or business, or they're starting life. So we're seeing a lot of parents giving it to new graduates to say, you know, really embrace some of these ideas and some of this thinking early on, because, oh, I wish I would have had this book when I graduated. I would have really used it in a different way. And so I have been really encouraged to see that it's been used in that way as a transition book.
Yeah. Now, do you have any kids? I didn't ask you that before.
I do. I have one daughter, and she is 21, and her name is Aria.
Okay. And has she read the book? And what does she think?
Well, Aria is, of course, one of the characters in the book, and she goes by Joy, but she loves it. She was instrumental in brainstorming different parts of the book and thinking about different things. And in fact, I wrote it initially thinking, what advice would I give to my daughter? And this was a few years ago when I started this thinking. And then I thought, well, you know, she'd be bored to tears with a business book, with a leadership book, with a success book. The only thing that would reach my daughter is a story. And she's an artist. She's creative. And so I thought, let me be creative and just start writing this as a story. And she was also part of kind of helping to shape it.
That's amazing. I love it. I think a lot of, I don't know, I write too. And a lot of what I write is really, I think about my kids, what's going to help them. You know, you want to think about who it is that you're wanting to bless or help with your work. And that's great that you had your daughter as kind of someone you're thinking about as you're writing it. Well, as I mentioned before we started recording, after reading it, I read it in one sitting. And I have sticky notes all throughout, which I will share in the show notes, some of my favorite parts and quotes from it. But after reading it, the next thing I did was I put a sticky note on it and put it on my 18-year-old son's desk. And he has not read it yet, but he promises he will. And you gave me some insights before. I'm going to send him to the quiz on your site as well. But I really think I have found, especially with teenagers, college kids, having a resource like this where it's not you telling them what to do, but it's sharing ideas and resources that resonate, that they can relate to, is such a great way to teach kids. And stories, I love that you did a story. It's so much easier to read in this format than a list of, here's mistake number one, you know, don't do it.
So true.
Yeah.
It's true. Of course, the research shows that we remember things by story significantly more. And that's what we remember. We don't remember these facts. We remember the stories. We remember, I mean, I can still remember teachers that I had, and I don't necessarily remember every fact that they taught, but I can remember the colorful ones, the ones that had passion, the ones that were kind of teaching in that way. You're all about camps. And, you know, I'm thinking about some experiences I had at camps where a teacher was coming in or telling this incredible story around the fire. That's what really, you know, energizes you. And I've seen that to be the case. Also, how we all learn differently. So I know a lot of teenagers are enjoying the audiobook that I recorded so they could listen to it instead of reading it. So it all depends on how you take in information. But it is true. We just love stories. And, you know, a story well told. I wanted to write it so that it was entertaining and you'd want to know what happened in the story. And the lessons were kind of in the background rather than let me just preach to you these lessons and then you kind of roll your eyes and move on. So that was the intent. And saying some kind words about John Gordon and his great book and many books. I've read all of them. He's tremendous. So I'm delighted to be put in that category and certainly delighted that he endorsed this book as well.
Yeah, it's so fun. Another book, I don't know if you've read Laura Vanderkam's recent book, Juliet's School of Possibilities.
I have not read it. I have just heard that twice. So
okay.
I'm definitely going to be reading that soon.
It's the same genre. It's a fable with life lessons. And again, I think this is just a great way because I'm very into, I read all the positive psychology books and leadership, and I like reading those books about culture, but most people don't. And so this is so relatable. It's so great. And I think the way you wrote it too, like it has the story, but then you do give a summary of each mistake so that you can refer back to it and everything else. So let's just talk about a few of them. Again, there are 9 that you go over in the book. But your first one, mistake number 1, is working on someone else's dream. So why don't you talk a little bit about a mistake that's very commonly made by people?
We find ourselves in life drifting along many times. And we get to a point and we say, wait, why am I here? And this is why I think it's so relative to people in transition. It may happen when you're in midlife crisis. It may happen when you're majoring in something in college. It may happen later in life, but we shouldn't just find ourselves drifting. The most successful people don't make this mistake. They don't find themselves swept up in someone else's dreams, swept down the river and wonder, well, how am I here? They're very deliberate, saying, what is my dream? What is my purpose? What gives me energy? Why am I uniquely put on this planet? What is my God-given purpose to really do something different in this world that is unique to my giftedness, my skills, my attitude, the people around me? What am I here for? The most successful people are thinking about their purpose, their compass, the way they set their sails. The winds, the storms hit all of us, but we can choose how we want to set the sail. And that sail should be set according to that purpose that we have for our life. So working on someone else's dream is very dangerous, to find that you have only become part of somebody else's vision and that you haven't really set your own. And I think that's particularly important for people in transition, to be thinking about, in this next phase, as I take on this next phase of my life, this next challenge in front of me, what is my dream? And am I going after it with a passion? And how do I guard against drifting over here or being pushed over there by someone who may be well-intentioned, but they want to push their dream? So mom wants to push her major on me, or my first boss wants me to go over in this department. Maybe that's right for me. Maybe I'll give credence to it. I'll listen to it. But maybe I want to take some time to reflect and think about my own dream and my own purpose. That's what that one's all about.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the whole parenting thing, because I think, again, as parents, we definitely have our kids' best interests. We want great things for them. But it's very hard sometimes to separate our own dreams from theirs. I think we need to focus. I think as a parent, I always say the modeling of what we do is the most important thing we do for our kids, because if they see us working on our own dreams, they will then learn, oh, that's a thing you can do. You don't have to go with the flow or get the same kinds of jobs that other people have. And so I really like that. I think also it's really important for both parents and kids to be working on their own separate dreams.
Yes. And so often in life, we learn to look at life through the lens that we think about things. And so even as parents, sometimes well-intentioned, we're looking at it through our lens, and then we impose that lens on the child. And it becomes important to say, okay, instead of imposing that lens, instead what I want to do is share my values. I want to share my principles. I want to share how I approach life and model that, like you said. But the methodologies, the ways you do it, that's going to be uniquely yours. And I want to help you awaken that dream within yourself and think about your own purpose, because your lens is different than mine. And that's a good thing. I want to encourage that. Let's not think, because oftentimes as kids, I remember we would think, well, I should be looking at it the way dad does. I should be imposing mom's view. And the more mature approach to that is, as we learn to just put that aside and say, I want to learn from that. I want to extract the best I can from it, but I need to set aside mom and dad's view at some point, because though well-intentioned, they're looking at it in a different way.
Right. I see a lot of people, a lot of these young adults who are working at camp who are conflicted because what they want to do, or an area, a field, something that they want to pursue, is not what their parents dream of for them. The parents have dreams, of law school, medical school, certain professions. Maybe it's one of the parents' professions. Maybe it's in the family, a family business, whatever it might be. And it's really difficult for these young adults to be able to say, I think I want to do something different. And I think as parents, we need to really be careful, because our kids do look to us. They want us to be happy for what they're doing and be proud of them. And so, gosh, I just think this is such an important thing, because you can go through your whole life pursuing someone else's dream.
It's so obviously a dangerous thing to happen. I'll tell you, two things make me think of it. One is I am a lawyer, and then I went into sales, which tells you, though, that's a little unusual, right? To say, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go this direction. And the danger is, as parents, we want to help. And sometimes kids are going through different things. I mean, their brain isn't fully matured until a certain age, all of these things. So if they say, hey, dad, dude, I want to go be a surfer and that's my dream. The question is, maybe that's true. Maybe you'll be a world-renowned surfer and have this whole business around it. You could be maybe that's your dream. Or maybe I'm put on this earth to guard you against yourself, because that is not exactly what is best for you. And mother knows best, from that song in the movie. Who knows, right, what it is? And that's the mystery of life. I don't think there's any way that we could say, no, this is your absolute answer. But we have to guard against either side of, let's not go over here, to determine what is your dream, what is your purpose, what gives you energy, what are you uniquely gifted at, and to help guide people. I've seen the reverse too. I mean, I would watch my mom counsel people who would come into our house, and some of them would have this big dream. You mentioned being a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a medical student, etc. And the young woman I'm thinking of had serious learning disabilities, could not read, not to be critical, but very, very low IQ, did not have the ability intellectually to be an advanced medical neurologist kind of thing. She was thinking brain surgeon, etc. Admire the dream. But what my mom would try to do was say, okay, let's look at the why. Let's look at what's underneath of that. Let's look at your giftedness. Oh, you want to help people? Maybe we should steer you over here to use that giftedness and use that love you have for people and this service mentality, and you want to help, and maybe channel you into maybe volunteering at the nursing home a little bit to see if this is something that is interesting you and sparks ideas, and maybe there's a profession here. And so there's a way to do that without, offending the person. And the reverse could be the two as well. I saw that where somebody wasn't aiming high enough. So it could be either way. But until you find that unique place, it is a challenge for us to have this artistic, scientific mix of how to find my purpose.
Right. Just asking those questions, though. Your mom sounds awesome. Was this a formal program, or just how did people find this, opportunity to come to your house and get this support?
We would often ask that. I would remember some people would come in, had been referred by an abuse center in town. Other found our number, a lot of referrals from other people. There was a hospital that did psychiatric work in the area. We had people who had multiple personality, on and on and on. But it was almost a mystery of how certain people would land there. People would be hiding, right? That would be one, where an abusive situation, and we're very concerned about safety. So yeah, a whole range of people and circumstances, but what a wonderful opportunity. And when you see people broken, I think it gives you a deeper understanding, and you learn later in life, even as a CEO of a major company, that if you treat everyone like they're broken and hurting, you're probably right more of the time than you think. And so it gives you a little bit of empathy because we're all experiencing different challenges, and that's what life's all about. But the question is, how do you overcome them?
Right. Absolutely. Well, obviously it worked. This influence on you was so tremendous because you're continuing your parents' work in a different way of helping others and spreading the word about how to have a good life. And it was kind of, you were listening probably to all that counsel for these people while you were growing up.
Absolutely. And taking it in all the time and making sure you're constantly learning. Jim Rohn used to say, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And I think that's a big thing that I believe on. I tell students, work harder on yourself than your grades. Work harder on your job is not the solution. It's working harder on yourself. And when you think about a grade or you think about a prize, if you think about an award, if you think about a race, that's temporary. Now, it may be good to have these goals, but really think about who am I becoming and what am I developing, because that's where the major difference will make in your life to become more successful.
Sure. Well, I want to talk about, I'm trying to decide which mistake, because I think we have time to talk about one more. And I think the one I want to focus on is mistake number 3, which is accepting excuses, because I think that's something that, I don't know, we all can have the tendency to say all the reasons why we just didn't have time to exercise today, or we didn't really just finish this task that we had put on our goals for this week, or, whether it's little things or big things, I think that's just the human tendency. So why don't you talk a little bit about that mistake?
Mistake in accepting excuses is one that I see in the business world. It's one I see for people all along. Excuses are dangerous. We can have an excuse in our head. Some people are so good. They have an art of making excuses, and they're so good at it. You think, wow, that was amazing. If you would have spent the time and creativity on doing it, it would have been much more effective than the time and creativity on making an excuse. A few years ago, we interviewed Rich Gaspari. He was former Mr. Universe, and he was here for the Arnold, this huge bodybuilding competition that happens in Columbus, Ohio. And he's also the CEO of Gaspari Nutrition, hugely successful. But he got back into shape, tip-top shape, to be on the cover of a magazine decades after having been on them when he was young and when he was Mr. Universe. And he wrote a book called No Excuses. And he said, we just make these excuses of why we can't do it. And the most successful people overcome these excuses. And I saw this time and time again. Jennifer Farr Davis, she was the fastest for a while hiking the Appalachian Trail, over 2,000 miles. And she had all these excuses. So she would break something. She would be bitten by a snake. Her eyes were frozen shut. I mean, all of these things that would have stopped us. They said, oh, a woman can't do this. You can't go north to south. Well, she said, a woman can do it. I can go north to south. A hiker can beat a runner. I can beat lightning strikes that hit me and animals that bite me, and I'm going to break this record. And she did. She did it by overcoming those excuses. How do you overcome that voice inside that's saying, you can't, you're not enough, you're not good enough, you've never been able to do this. What makes you think you can do this? The key to success is overcoming those negative voices. Stop this idea of making excuses. You know what? The excuse that you tell to somebody else, I don't even care about that much. It's the excuse you're telling yourself. As I say in the book, people quote it a lot, is the most important microphone in the world is the one inside your mind. Guard it with everything you have. Watch what you're putting into your mind, what you're reading. And don't let a voice come up to that microphone and blast your internal subconscious with excuses and reasons why you can't and this and that. No, guard that microphone and reprogram it so that you hear a voice saying, you can do this. You should wake up and run. You can go out there and do this. You can be back on the cover of this magazine. You can whatever you want to do. Because the most successful people do that day in, day out. Of course, we all face these things. We all have excuses. And some of us, you could say, well, this is a legitimate excuse. I don't care. Some people tell me the excuse as if like I'm some judge and I'd say, yes, well, that's a legitimate excuse. So you have freedom to be a loser. No, it's your life. So you need to say, I mean, I can empathize with you and say, wow, that was amazing. Like I get it now, right? But I've watched people go through unbelievable circumstances, abuse, addiction. My wife has fought cancer twice. And I would see people who could use all these excuses, learning disabilities, whatever they are, really big challenges, but saying, you know what? I'm not going to accept them. I'm going to overcome them. I'm going to use those excuses as fuel, as rocket fuel for my success. And those excuses actually become the foundation for me saying, look what I've overcome. And isn't it a greater story to go back and say, let me talk about how we overcame these things that were excuses, instead of, let me tell you why I'm a loser. Nobody wants to hear that. We want you to win. We want you to be the best you can be. We can feel sorry for you, but what good is that? We want to celebrate with you how you overcame the impossible. Much more exciting.
Oh gosh, Skip, everybody needs your voice in our heads. Every day, start the day with inspiration from Skip. Okay, as you were talking and you mentioned the audiobook, I really think this is a book that I want to use at my own camp to read aloud to some of our older campers. I think it would be really effective. They really listen to these young adults, the college age kids, who, while reading the book, will also learn from it themselves. But I love the idea for parents to do this as an audiobook in the car, driving around with their kids.
Yes. And it's a great discussion point. You can say, hey, let's talk about this. Have we made this mistake? Because by the way, we all have. Anybody who hasn't made any of these mistakes, maybe they're really good at deluding themselves. And you can take the quiz and see which character and which mistake is you in the book. So you can go to thebookofmistakes.com, take the quiz. And it's a great discussion point to say, hey, I'm the bookseller. Wait, I'm the playwright. And what does that mean? And hey, here's who I am and how I operate. And it becomes a fun way to start those discussions as a family.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I hadn't found the quiz yet, but I will take it right after we talk. I'll add my results to the show notes so people can see what I did. Well, anyway, Skip, I am so excited to be introduced to you and your work and this book. I'm now an email subscriber and I'm following all the things that you're doing. Where is the best place for people to find you and find more information about this book and the other things that you're doing, your speaking, all of that?
Well, the easiest place is my blog is at skipprichard.com. No T in Pritchard, so SkipPrichard, skipprichard.com. There's also thebookofmistakes.com, and it's actually so thebookofmistakes.com. That's where you can take the quiz. But yeah, connect with me on social media. Love to hear people's stories of which mistake they had, how they overcame it, how they're not making those excuses, and how they seize control of that microphone in their mind. I love those stories.
It's so inspirational. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm really, really happy to be connected, and I hope we get to connect again sometime.
I would love that. I look forward to it, and great to find your resource and inspiring a whole next generation. Thank you for what you do.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Skip Prichard about his book, The Book of Mistakes. Of course, as soon as we finished our interview, I got on his website to take the Book of Mistakes quiz and found out that my results are the trainer in the Book of Mistakes. And so I looked back in the chapter about that the trainer is in, and the trainer is the one who teaches David about mistake number 3, accepting excuses. So I liked my results, and I recommend you going and finding out what yours are, because they're really positive results. They tell you what mistake you are probably least likely to make. As always, you can find everything that we talked about in this episode in the show notes, which are on my website at sunshine-parenting.com. Search for episode 84. In those show notes, I also copied my results from the Book of Mistakes quiz. And I'd love to hear what yours is as well. Send me an email at audrey@sunshine-parenting.com and let me know what your results were. If you don't want to send an email, another really fun new feature I have on my website is a voicemail recorder. You can just quickly record your question and it will come to me via email, and it's something that I could possibly use on a podcast episode. So feel free to send me a voicemail message or an email if you have any questions about summer camp, parenting, or happiness. I'll end this episode with a quote from Skip's book in the chapter about mistake number 7, which is trying to blend in instead of standing out. Skip says, authenticity is the result of standing out. If you are true to your design, you naturally stand out from others because no one else is quite like you. Authenticity is the beautiful expression of your unique giftedness.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.